Can you all hear me okay? Is that all right? Thank you for, I don't get too many home-cooked meals, so I appreciate whoever did the cooking back there, outstanding. Very good, so thank you for breakfast. So I'm just going to take a few minutes, about 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, my background, what we're doing in the department. I'm going to close out about 9 o'clock, and then if there's any questions, we'll go from there, and I don't want to rush or hold anybody up. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up in Cincinnati. I wanted to play center field for the Cincinnati Reds, and I'll just say that didn't work out. I went to college in Dayton. I joined the Richmond, Virginia Police Department, just about an hour and a half up the road. I did 25 years there. This is important. Richmond has 750 officers in a population of about 225,000. Newport News has 450 officers in a population of about 180,000. And that's important. I'm going to come back to that for a minute. So I did 25 years in Richmond. I left there as the assistant chief, one of my former chiefs. So while I was there, I had 8 different chiefs in 25 years. One of the chiefs who had retired was now a consultant, and he called me and he said, "Hey, look, Newport News is looking for a new chief. I think you should look into it." And I said, "Well, you know, boss, I'm happy where I'm at. I never really thought about that." And he said, "Well, just look at it." So I drove down. I visited the city. I thought people were very, very friendly here. I learned very quickly everybody owns a dog in Newport News, right? So everybody's out walking their dogs and they're talking, and some had very favorable things to say about the police department, and some not so favorable, and I would expect that. So I did apply. I talked to Chief Monroe, was the chief that I dealt with, and I did apply, and we kind of got down to the finals. And when I was offered the position, I asked the city manager, I said, "Why, you know, you've asked me questions, why did you choose me? You know, why?" And she said, "For 2 reasons." She said, "We saw what you did with crime in Richmond, and we need better community relations with our police department in our community." So I was humbled by that. So I took the job. By the grace of God, I've been completely blessed. This is a great city. It's a very good department. There's a lot of talented people. But I was sharing with the guys here at my table, I'm just going to be frank. I'm just going to be very open. This city, the department, had gotten very complacent. When I got here, I had a forensics division that worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I had a homicide division that worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I had a robbery division that worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And I had 40 narcotic detectives.
Wow.
Now, unless they're selling kilos on every street corner in Newport News, I don't need 40 narcotic detectives. In Richmond, we had 10. Our shootings, our homicides, do not happen Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They happen between 7 p.m. and 2 a.m. So they would come back when those shootings happen or when we had a homicide, but now I'm paying everybody time and a half to come back and work it. And that's not good service. The 40 narcotic detectives are stationed downtown. They're not in a precinct, so the accountability is to who? Who are they accountable for? They're accountable, well, because when a citizen calls about a drug activity, they're calling the precinct captain for the neighborhood where they live. They're not calling the narcotics division. They're calling Captain so-and-so. "Hey, what are you doing?" So what happens when I got here is that captain would have to call down to narcotics and say, "Hey, I have a house that's a problem. Can you do something about it?" And narcotics would say, "Yeah, we'll put it on our list and we'll get to you when we can." That's not good business. That's just not. So I came here, I started in July 2nd. But in June, I would come back and forth from Richmond. I'd spend about 2 or 3 days here and go back. There was a little girl that was shot in the leg over at Cottage Grove Apartments. Aiden, a 10-year-old boy, was shot at 35th and Roanoke. And a young boy by the name of Malachi, 9 or 10 years old, was shot in the head just up the street. So when I came in one day, I asked, I said, what's the update on those shootings? And my staff, my executive staff, the assistant chiefs didn't know. And they said, "Well, we haven't talked to the detective yet." So I got up, we were in a meeting, I got up and I went down to the 2nd floor, that's where he housed all our detectives. And they asked me, they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go down and talk to the detective. I need to know what's going on with that case." And I say that, there is good quality people here. This is a very, very talented department. I work with some great men and women. But we've gotten complacent. If I had 3 kids shot in a month in Richmond, people would be banging on the door. Here, that's what happens, right? So I didn't feel the
Urgency.
from my department. But you know what else? I didn't feel it from the community either. The families were upset, but I didn't hear it from neighbors and citizens, and we should have. And if we tolerate that nonsense in this city, this is where we stay. We stay complacent. So we jumbled some things up. I need every crime that happens in one of the 3 precincts, either the south, the central, or the north. So I've empowered my precinct captains to hold them accountable, right? So the first thing we did is we took these 40 narcotic detectives and we decreased that to 12. And I put a lot of resources back in the precinct. They call them HIP units, or what it is, it's a 6-man team that they can either walk, use their bicycles, patrol cars, but they kind of do the street level gun and drug enforcement. I think I get a bigger bang for my buck when I put them in a precinct next to their precinct captain. So when that citizen calls and says, I have a drug house here in my neighborhood, I'm not calling down here and asking for help. I'm walking outside my office to that sergeant and those 6 officers, I have an issue we need to address. The other issue I had is I got 7 homicide detectives. We average about 25, 30 homicides a year here in Newport News. So I got 7 detectives. So they handle all those homicides, they handle every suicide, every heroin overdose, and every shooting. In 2017, we had 90 people shot in Newport News. In 2018, we had 92. It didn't change much. They cannot, there's no way 7 people can handle 24, 25 homicides, 90 shootings, 33 deaths by overdose, and countless suicides. They can't do that. National average says a homicide detective should handle 3 cases because they have to keep that family, all the forensics evidence, all the stuff that goes with it. The trial doesn't come for 8 months, 9 months down the road. That's a lot. So I got rid of the robbery unit and put robberies back in the precincts. There's detectives there that can address that. And I created an aggravated assault division. Aggravated assault, now those 6 detectives handle all the shootings. They handle the stabbings or the bad beatings, right? I took homicide from 7 to 10, and 2 of those 10 have to focus on what? Old cases, cold cases. So if your family member was shot 3 years ago, do you think a 7-man homicide division handling 90 shootings, suicides, overdoses, and homicides is looking at your case 3 years ago? They don't have time. They don't have time. So I have 2 detectives now that focus on cold cases. So we restructured this department. We brought back a ComStat meeting. Bratton created that up in New York where we're looking at crime every Monday and we look at it every Thursday. What's our crime? What's our goals? What are we doing in this neighborhood? What's the strategies? What's causing the crime? What's your plan? And what's your goal to reduce it by next week or next 2 weeks or the next month when we come back and talk about it, right? So every Thursday we do ComStat, and so I shouldn't say 2 Thursdays a month. ComStat, Intel, ComStat, and Intel. The Intel meeting is much more that we know this individual is dealing drugs. What are we doing to address this individual? We know he's in this neighborhood, or we know this hotel is allowing prostitution. What are we doing about prostitution? The ComStat meeting is more about neighborhoods. The Intel meeting is much more focused on individuals. We know that this table, this group, these 5 guys are running around doing robberies in Newport News. What are we doing to address them? Or what are we doing in this neighborhood? So as I look back over the last 3 to 5 years, there's 3 neighborhoods that really push crime in this city. We decided this year, we did our goal setting 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, where we decided what our goals would be. Courthouse Green in the central. Oh no, that's the north. Jill Duskowski, that's the north. Marshall Courts, Deep South, and Ridley Circle. You can pretty much tell how violent crime is going to go in this city by looking at those 3 neighborhoods. Now, I'm not saying they're accountable for all of it, but they're accountable for a big part of it. And we're trying to focus on those neighborhoods all year long. The other thing I created is I don't think we did enough with our youth and community in this city. I need to open up this department and be much more transparent. So we use the 14 SROs. We have an SRO in every high school and every middle school. And we put 4 officers with that group, and that is our community youth and outreach. So we focus on businesses, faith leaders, or churches, right? Our community and our youth. We meet every Thursday evening for 2.5 hours with a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior from every high school in this city. They just did their elections, and I'm going to take them to city council meeting this Thursday, the president, vice president, secretary, and I'm going to have them introduce them. So I got to get them some exposure. I've got to do more with youth. We're partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. We just did a basketball league for 8 weeks down at the Boys and Girls Club on Hampton Avenue Drive, Boulevard. down on the south part of the city. They got a new basketball floor. But I had officers coach those kids. So one night a week, an officer interacted with 5 youth for about an hour and a half, and then we had the games on Saturday. So we played a league, 8 weeks, 8 teams, and then our 9th week was like our March Madness. We played like a single elimination. The mayor came out, city councilman came out, and I took that group. I think you were there. I took that group. The team that won it, we took them to city council and let the mayor just congratulate them. I just need to get more exposure for our youth, right? The last 2 things I want to say, I guess 3. One is when we use force in our city. Now, I'm not talking excessive force. Excessive force would be if 4 of us arrested you and just pummeled you. That's excessive force. That's criminal. Any police that's involved in a shooting, that's considered a criminal, it's a homicide, it's a criminal act, and it's investigated by our Internal Affairs Division, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and the State Lab out of Norfolk, right? Excessive force and police-involved shootings. Everything else, mace, OC, fist fight, a run and tackle, our ASP, our taser deployment, that's what we just call use of force. So an officer would do that report, he would send it up to the chief, I would look at it and sign off on it. I don't think that's the best way to do that. Some people might say, well, you can kind of protect your own if they're doing that or they're not doing that, if it's right or wrong. So we created and I got some pushback for it, but we created a use of force review board, not oversight, but a review board that has made up of an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, a sergeant from Internal Affairs, a sergeant from our training academy that talks about how we train, what Department of Justice standards are, and 2 citizens. The only requirement for the 2 citizens is they have to have gone through the Citizens Academy. So they have some basic knowledge of what we do in the police department. So every officer has a body-worn camera, and we show that footage. We show citizens spitting on officers, being mean to officers, pushing officers, fighting officers, swinging at officers. We show that. But we also show that body-worn camera footage, unedited. We show officers that say things that they shouldn't say to citizens. And they get a vote. Those individuals at the table, they either vote in policy, out of policy, in policy, but we could do some things different. So in policy would mean that you pulled a knife on me, I tased you, did everything I should, in policy. Out of policy means I give up, hey, I thought he had a gun, I tased him, that's out of policy. What do we do to address that? And I will tell that every people make mistakes, right? Every mistake does not have to be tied to discipline, but I've got to train it and focus on it. I don't want that to keep happening. The other issue may be in policy, but we could have done something better. So my friend has a mental illness. Every time we're dispatched to his address, he fights with us. Every time. So maybe we tag that address, and when we go to this address, we send 2 officers and a female that he might relate to better. The female officer may be able to keep him calmer. That's something we could do better. So how do we learn from that? They don't determine any type of discipline, but they do get a vote and they see it, and I think that's important. I try to interact with those citizens after each session. Now we've done 4, and there was a lot of pushback. Don't do that. It won't. It's bad. No, it's not. It's being transparent. I got to build trust in this community, and you know what? We were doing that in Richmond for 10 years, and I oversaw that process in Richmond for 5. I know what I was talking about, but it's just change, and sometimes people don't like change. In law enforcement, we do not like the way things are, and we don't like to change, right? You'll get that later. We don't like the way things are, and we don't like to. So the other thing we did is our promotions. We would do a promotion process. They'd come before the chief. I'd have the final interview, and I'd decide who's our sergeants, who's our lieutenants. I don't think that's the best way. So now when we do our interview panel, it's myself, one of the assistant chiefs, and who else? Somebody from the community. Dr. Beverly Ashburn, she's a pastor down in Southeast Community. She sat on our panel and helped pick our sergeants that we just promoted about 4 months ago. And Happy Witt, who's an executive on the African American female, she's an executive on the YMCA board. She helped pick our lieutenants about 3 months ago. I've got to pick a new deputy chief, and we were talking about the process, and they were saying, so chief, you can bring him in and interview him. And no. It'll be myself, and I need some people from the community to pick the leadership of this department. I think that's important. We build trust that way. So those are just kind of sort of the new things, the directions that we're going. We set our goals. We talked about deployment, how we deploy, community youth and interaction. I can't go to a neighborhood in martial courts and arrest my way out of that problem. I've got to do arrests. I've got to do build trust, interaction. Those people in neighborhoods, they know what's happening in their neighborhood, but sometimes they're afraid. And it is very easy for me, us in uniform, to say, take your neighborhood back, tell us what's going on, and then we leave. But they live there, and that's real, right? And we got to take that into consideration. So I've got to build strong trust, and that's where I want to also do youth. It's that guardian warrior type balance. We got to do both things in neighborhoods, right? Holistic approach. It ain't just go in, make an arrest, and leave. Because all I do then is young men, young boys, primarily, they see us arrest their fathers and their mothers and their brothers, and then we leave, and that's not a good look. Now that's a change. Some officers have a hard time, but I'm telling you, at the end of the day, that stuff's effective. So we set our goals, and two that I want to talk about. We had 26 murders in 2017. We had 24 murders in 2018. So our goal for 2019 is to have no more than 19 murders in this city. That's a 20% reduction. If we hit that goal, if we get to 19, there will be other departments that will come here to look at what we're doing. 90 shootings in 17, 92 shootings last year. Our goal this year is to reduce that by 20%. That's 20 shootings less. We had 13 people shot in January last year. 13, the first month of the year. Besides this table, anybody have an idea how many people were? Anybody have an idea of how many people were shot in January this year? 13 last year in January. How many this year in January?
8. 8.
2.
Wow.
Something is working. Sometimes things that we do in 2 or 3 months we don't see those results overnight. It takes us a while to see it, and I think we're on the right pace. Hampton has had, and I never talk about another department, but just to keep things relevant, Hampton's already had 4 homicides this year. How many have we had? 0. 0. And I got to get that information out to the community. I don't do a good job of getting information out. I've got to find a better way. In Richmond, we had all 3 news channels in the city. I don't have that here, right? I've got to call and ask. I asked every news channel, here's my vent. We did that basketball league every Saturday for 8, 9 weeks. And I asked all 3 of those news outlets to come over and see those kids play ball with officers coaching them, right? Never came. But I tell you what, if one of those kids would have brought a gun into that facility, they would have busted, they would have broke speed limits getting there. So that's a struggle for me, trying to work. The Daily Press did a good job. They came out and covered it. But the big 3 that I couldn't get them there. And I get that. I got to find a better way. The last thing I want to say, and I'm going to sit down, or at least take questions, is there is one demographic that I struggle with. I am not doing enough in the Hispanic community in Newport News. That's a population that continues to grow. I'm not doing enough to focus in those communities. I'm not doing enough to interact. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. I think it was Pastor Juan Garcia. He goes to this church. I had some conversation with him. I know there's a Hispanic service here, but I've got to do more. One of the goals we set is we have about 28 people in each academy class. We graduate about 25. Going forward, every academy class, I need 3 people to speak Spanish. And the response I got was, well, we can't determine who applies, and I agree. But I want to be in the communities. I've got to work with churches, or if we got to go to San Diego, California and recruit people, if I've got to go to Houston, Texas to recruit, I can't just say, well, it is what it is. That's complacent. I have got to do more in the Hispanic communities in this city, and I'm going to have 3 officers in each academy going forward that speak Spanish. I don't care what race they are, but I've got to have Spanish speakers. That's important. That's important. So I went about 4 minutes over. I don't want to hold you guys too long. If anybody has a question, I'll play off you on time-wise. But yes, sir.